Yes. All right. So welcome to Talking Data Equity for Friday, July 14th. And Talking Data Equity, as the folks who attend regularly already know, is an informal conversation that we try and have most Fridays at this time, at this link. And the number one reason that we have Talking Data Equity is because trying to figure out how to embed equity in math and in data and in evaluation and in any quantitative work can be really challenging. And sometimes it's just really, really helpful to know that you are not alone, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what country you're in, no matter what demographics or identities or problems you're interested in and committed to. You are not alone, and there are all kinds of people working on the same or similar issues and problems. That's really why we do Talking Data Equity. The other thing that we do is we try and cover topics or ideas or examples that can be useful. The idea is that this is a practical, useful time to get together and ask questions, share resources, share strategies, and all of that. Sometimes we have a special guest speaker. We do not have a special guest speaker today because, as I mentioned, I'm on vacation and the tech is very unpredictable when you're on vacation, and I did not want to subject a person that I admire and respect to my vacation tech. So I am the person for today. And sometimes we do special topics that are really, really technical, like how to do Bayesian analysis or cluster sampling. And sometimes we do less technical, but equally important topics, like what labels or names should we use when we're collecting demographic data, and everything in between. So that is the deal with Talking Data Equity. If you're a regular, thank you a million. It is fabulous to have this community. And if this is your first time, welcome. You have chosen a really interesting time to join us because today we are going to talk about tools. Not the we all count tool. Sorry, there was a little bit of confusion about that. We can do another one where we talk about the we all count tools, but today we're really focusing on tools that people use to collect data, analyze data, make sense of data, visualize data. And we get a lot of requests for help with tools that can accomplish different technical tasks. And so what we did was we really crowdsourced. We circulated a little informal survey amongst most of you and asked you what tools you use, what tools you love, what tasks you're trying to accomplish that you don't have tools for. And so I'm going to share the results of some of the parts of that survey. And I'm going to share with you some other tools that we use, some specialized tools. And then we can just have a conversation about, what's working for you, what tools are still missing. And I should say two things at the start of this. The first is that I am not affiliated. We All Count is not affiliated with any of these tools. We don't contribute to, own, invest in, have any relationship at all with any of these tools that we're going to be talking about. And I'm not also saying these tools are all perfect. In fact, I'm very shortly going to be saying that none of these tools are perfect. All of these tools have pros and cons and needs to be used with care. So this is not a list of the tools that I think are great. This is a list of tools that you told me that you use and that we often use as well. So having said all that, let's jump in. Oh, and I should say, feel free to use the chat at any point. So we'll have an open Q&A in a couple of minutes, but feel free to use the chat at any time. And there's two ways to use the Zoom chat here at Talking Data Equity. You can use that drop-down menu set to hosts and panelists, and then only me, there is no tech team today, only I will see your questions or your comments. Or you can use that drop-down menu set to everyone, and then everyone will be able to see your comments. And we highly encourage you to use whichever one really feels best for you, because the whole point of talking data equity is to do something that feels useful and nurturing for you. Okay, so tools edition, number one deal, number one thing is that you should trust no tool implicitly. Everything we talk about, the whole foundation of the data equity framework and the work that we do at We All Count and the work that many of you do, is that data equity is about choices. And the choices that you make at every step of the evidence generation process influences both the human and the mathematical consequences. So it influences like whose lived experience gets prioritized, whose values get privileged, and the choices influence the actual numbers that come out of quantitative work. So with that in mind, it's pretty easy to see how important tools are. That some tools can be used to make it easier to notice, implement, document the choices that you're making or the choices that someone else is making, and therefore make it easier for you to align the work that you're doing with quantitative data with the values and equity goals of that project. And at the same time, tools almost always, I know this slide says can, but I think it maybe should say do, make hidden choices. And they make choices that are hidden so that you don't always automatically notice the choices. And depending on the tool, it will make it harder or easier for you to know what choices were made and why those choices were made. So I would say that in general, most tools have a combination of these things, and your comfort with the tool and your own personal team's strengths and weaknesses will have a lot to do with influencing what tool is best for you, which is why I don't have an answer of like, oh, if you're using analysis, you should always use this. Or if you're using data viz, you should never use this. Depends on your strengths. It depends on what choices really matter to the project that you're working on. I'm going to give you a couple of really brief examples because we're not going to go into any one specific tool, but I just want to show a couple of examples. For example, data visualization tools. This picture on the right was made with a very widely used conventional data visualization tool, and the tool on the left was made by hand. And so you can see in this data visualization how the tool on the right, the tool that made this chart, made choices to make the circles or the dots very, very specific, very defined, and the lines very, very straight. And that might seem like something that obviously every data visualization tool does, but it doesn't have to be that way. And the fact that that is a choice, like a default choice, that is so deeply embedded in almost all the tools that we use to make data visualizations, we get habituated to think, well, a good or a proper data visualization has very, very specific and tight pixels. The color, the circles are all the same shape and size when done digitally in a data visualization tool, and the lines are always very straight. When in fact, that is a choice, and that choice has mathematical and human consequences. It certainly sends messages about the sameness and the exactness and the certainty that sometimes are correct for your project and sometimes are very, very much not correct for your project and are not in alignment with the values of your project. So I'm not saying that one of these data viz is better. I'm saying this one on the right is a default setting of almost every data viz program. Another really interesting thing that I'm very, very interested in personally is the way that time is displayed. So again, what we're just talking about here is the choices. There are so many choices that are made in default when you're going to display time. And again, most, not all, but most conventionally used data visualization tools, time is displayed in a very, very straight line. Sometimes in a curved line if you're showing something that's, you know, a polynomial or a log or different things. But in general, if you make a chart, it's going to show time in a straight line as a default. You can change it, of course, but as a default, and that is a very, very powerful assumption that has impact on the humans that you look at your data viz and on the math that comes out. And it's not the only choice. It's not the correct choice. There are interesting ways to display time in a nonlinear way, and interesting ways to display, like, this is a week. This is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Again, not to say that any of these are better or good, but they show you that the defaults that we've become so accustomed to seeing are not the only possibility. This is also true not just with the data vid stuff, but with the analysis stuff. The tools that we use to do an analysis will influence what the default or assumed results are. So you probably by now have all heard me talk about the average classroom size example. If not, just go on our YouTube channel and look for Not Your Average Average. I could also share the link with you. The way you take an average, the default way that your analysis tool takes an average is going to have huge implications for the math that comes out, and also the humans that get centered. So this is just one quick example of the fact that Tableau and Excel often, when you ask them to take an average, get different numbers. And the reason why people get really upset, and you know, in the online forums, if you're hanging out in on any of the online forums, you can see people get very upset when analysis tools don't give the same numbers. R and SPSS often don't give the same numbers. Those are two analysis tools. And part of the reason that they don't give the same numbers is that deep in the kind of technical assumptions about, like, are they calculating type 1, type 2, type 3 errors? They each have different defaults. And so tools really do matter. And that includes when you specify a model or a regression in the exact same way, you will get different answers when you use different tools. And there are a bunch of things to think about when it comes time to choose which tool you're going to use. Or I know a lot of you are kind of toying with the idea of learning how to use new tools. So I'm just going to give you a really quick list of things to think about, and then I'm going to start showing you the tools that you all told me that you use and giving you links to those tools. Okay, so when you're deciding what data collection tool to use, a couple of things that you want to check, and this is not an exhaustive list for sure, but we tried to highlight the things that really were going to focus on equity. So the privilege and power dynamics that are going to get embedded in your work. The defaults, always you have to figure out, okay, what are the deeply embedded habitual choices that this tool is built around. Then other things to think about are how does this tool handle privacy? What are the privacy options for this data collection tool? And that a very specific thing to think about is, where does this data collection tool store the data that's being collected in the cloud? And that matters because a lot of them, I know this is being a Canadian, a lot of them store the data that you collect in a cloud, in a server that is based in the United States, which means that that data is subject to US privacy and data access laws, not Canadian privacy and data access laws. So where your data collection tool stores the data that you're collecting really matters. It makes a huge difference in terms of who is allowed to do what with your data. Customization options. So when you're collecting data, we talk a lot about, how to offer people choices in terms of demographics, what types of names we should use, what types of labels we should use. Some data collection tools offer you lots of customization, some offer you none. And it's a really important thing to consider about a data collection tool. Sometimes we do so much community consultation and then we can't implement it because of the tech. Skip options are really important. If we're trying to do trauma-informed data collection, you need to have the ability to show some questions to certain people and not show those questions to other people. So depending on your context, that might be a make it or break it kind of thing. Language options, of course, and disability options. Do you have the ability, does your data collection tool have interfaces that are going to allow you to collect data from people who don't fit into like a really small box of, can use whatever type of tablet or whatever you're collecting data on. Great comments in the chat. I'm going to get there in just a second. And we are going to talk about AI, but we're not going to spend the whole day on AI, but we are definitely going to have to do some talking data equities on AI. But I am going to talk a little bit about AI. Okay, when you're choosing a data analysis tool, again, always check on the defaults, and you want to check on things like, can you customize the assumptions that the models are going to make, from the really technical stuff I was talking about, like do you want type 2 errors or type 3 errors, to much less technical but really important things like what do you want the baseline to be if you're going to compare groups? Are you able to set what group you want to be the baseline? Common sets of assumptions. If you've taken any basic stats classes, you know that all stats modeling is based on assumptions. What are the assumptions? Like these are statistical mathematical assumptions that are baked into the tool you're using. Error message settings. This is so important. Is your data analysis tool going to tell you when you're making a mistake, or is it not? And that can be a really important distinction when choosing a tool. Dates and times, just like we talked about with data viz, what assumptions your data analysis tool makes about dates and times is going to affect the way that you can embed equity in your work. And if you really want to hear some horror stories, just ask anybody that works a lot in R or a lot in Excel with dates and times, how hard it is to get it to work in alignment with what your project envisions as a date and a time. Statistical significance assumptions. We talk a lot in Talking Data Equity about the deep problems with statistical significance and the way it's used and more often misused. If your data analysis tool is going to tell you when something is statistically significant through stars or highlights or only showing you statistically significant things, what assumptions is it basing that on, and is that in alignment? How it handles missing data, really important thing to check. Again, it might seem very boring, but if your tool is throwing out entire rows of data that have partially missing data, which a lot of them do by default, you aren't analyzing the data that you think you are analyzing. Factors, that's very technical. So if that's a type of data, how it handles factors can be very important if you're using that kind of data. Assumptions about linearity, and the last thing, which again, we talk about tons, how it handles intersectionality. Can your data analysis do an analysis that actually multiplies the cumulative impact of demographics, or can it only add them together? Okay, last slide about this is data viz tools. And you probably already know a lot about what to check for data viz tools because these get the most kind of coverage. And of course, the defaults are important. Can you gather and test UX? UX is jargon. So sorry about the jargon on the slide, but UX is jargon for user experience. So does your data viz tool allow you to get feedback and find out if your visualizations work with the people you want them to work with? Very easy to find out if your viz works, with other people, but do they work with the people that you care about? Are there language settings in your data viz tools, just like in your data collection tools? There's a lot more flexibility in data collection tools to show things in different language than the data viz tools. Especially important to check if you want to display your data viz in language that doesn't conform to US English that goes left to right. There's lots of languages that don't do that. Can your data viz handle that? Portability settings, can you take it anywhere or do anything with this data viz? Privacy settings, that's a big one. More and more now, especially with AI and a couple of the cloud tools, people are uploading their data sets to make nice interactive dashboards and visuals, which is really, really nice. And make sure you know what happens to that data when you upload it. We're going to get to the AI. There's a new part of ChatGPT that's just come out that's accessible to people who want to pay for it or who are researching it, that allows you to upload your data. What happens to that data? Where is that data going? Cloud storage, same as data collection. And think about, do you want a data viz tool that allows you to tell a story, show a story, or have your user explore stories? Again, not telling you which one you should be using, just trying to give you a couple of starter things to think about. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you the tools. But actually, because I have to use a different screen, I'm going to do one thing before I show you the tools. I am going to talk to you about ChatGPT because I already see it's in the chat. So, all right. This is going to be really, really short. We are not doing a whole hour on AI today, but because it's definitely a tool and going to come up, I'm going to just share the basics, which is that there is this new thing called AI, which stands for artificial intelligence. And it's in lots of newspapers and stuff right now because it does very cool things right now. One of the big ones is called ChatGPT, which is owned by a nonprofit, which owns a very important and big for-profit organization. So don't get the idea that this is a nonprofit thing. It is not. And essentially, this is somebody in the chat referred to it as an LLM, which is shorthand for large language model. So essentially, there are four things going on that are working together. AI is basically a combination of NLP, which is natural language processing, which means it can work with data that is words and text. It doesn't have to be numbers. Machine learning, which we've talked a little bit about here, that's basically kind of looking at the data that you have and kind of making a very good prediction about what's going to come next. So it can do that, but it can do that with words. So that's why AI can kind of respond in words, because it's very good at guessing what the next word might be. And then it has these two other things called neural networks and deep learning, which are basically just specific types of machine learning, which means they can deal with complicated data, very large data, and they can have it in networks. We can talk a lot more about ChatGPT at another time if you want to, if you're interested, unless you hate it and don't want to. But it is a tool. And what I really wanted to emphasize here is that absolutely there's this new thing called Code Interpreter, which again, I think you have to have a subscription. As of a couple of days ago, you had to have a subscription to use it. But you can upload data to this code interpreter section of ChatGPT, and John Backus did just that. He uploaded some very basic San Francisco crime data and said to it, give me 10 ideas of trends, visualizations, and analysis I can do with this data. You can see it was very nice. It said, certainly, here are 10 ideas. And so already it is telling you how it can analyze and visualize this data. So you can see where we're going, right? And then, of course, he says, go ahead and do it. So, I showed you just a couple of things here, and it immediately can take the data that he uploaded, decide what a good analytics plan might be, and then produce that analysis. So this is definitely going to be a big deal, already is a big deal, because it can do all kinds of things, right? It can clean data, it can summarize data, it can make plots, it can build models that predict heart disease, it can build quote unquote better models, it can make plots, it can do all kinds of things. And all of that is true. And none of that changes any of the data equity issues that we talk about here at Talking Data Equity. ChatGPT or any other AI tool or any other large language model tool is no different than any other tool. And that's really important to remember. It's no different in any other tool in that it can, if used carefully, actually make it easier for you to implement and document your choices, and so that you can generate evidence maybe more efficiently while still doing so in a way that aligns the values with your project's goals. And these AI tools make it even more efficient to do the opposite, to make hidden choices and make hidden choices very authoritatively and quickly and efficiently, without being able to tell you why it's making those choices and which humans those choices are good for. So AI is no different than any other tool. That's the most important thing when you're trying to think about equity in AI, is remain grounded. It's still a tool. And it can be very, very good for data equity. And it's also going to make problematic non-equitable analysis much, much faster and cheaper. So we will talk about this at much, much greater length, I am sure. But since we were doing tools today, and oh, hello, you're still there, but great. So I'm going to share with you now a link to, and I will be putting this up in, our, great. I'll be putting this up. Sorry, you can tell I don't have my usual tech today. I will be putting this up in our data equity community forum, this list, and we will also make sure that you can add your own ideas. So I'm going to spend the next maybe 10 minutes showing you a summary of the tool. So I'm going to go pretty fast, which is why I've given you a link, because I just want to kind of give you a landscape overview of everything. And then I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, people to share tools that they think are missing, people to ask questions. So these are the results from the call that we put out to you folks to share the tools that you're using. And we made you a table of contents so that you can find a specific tool later if you would like to. And so we're going to start with tools that you use to collect data. Number one tool you folks said was Qualtrics. And Qualtrics is kind of a high-end online data collection tool. It is, I believe that most of the options you need to have at least some kind of subscription or payment for. Can you guys see my whole screen? Can you guys see the Barbie movie playing on my screen? I guess you can. Oh, well. So Qualtrics was number one in our list, and I have used Qualtrics, it has many, many strengths. Google Forms was number 2, and actually just this morning we got an invitation to join like the new AI enabled Google Workspace. So Google Forms is adopting AI as well. Google Forms has different pricing, and it tends to be a little bit less flexible than Qualtrics, but it's a little more user friendly. SurveyMonkey came in 3rd. SurveyMonkey has been around a long, long time. I've been using SurveyMonkey for as long as I can remember. SurveyMonkey has some great strengths. It can be very lightweight. We use SurveyMonkey a lot if we have to do surveys in areas where there's not a lot of internet or no internet. Typeform. Typeform is very nice in new, if you want things to look good. And I believe it has a free tier and a paid tier. Question Pro, actually, before Typeform, I didn't include a link here, but I should have included a page, was Paper. One of the tools that came in, I believe 5th or 6th, was Paper. We collect data using Paper. And I think that there was a lot to be said for collecting data using Paper. There's a lot of strengths. Okay, so Typeform we did. Question Pro, I haven't personally used Question Pro, but a lot of you said that you do use it and you do like it. And then also the last one I also haven't used, which is called Redcap, but a lot of you have said Redcap. Great. And so Taylor is telling us that SurveyMonkey has some new policies around surveying youth, so they transitioned to Question Pro. So excellent. Oh, and Redcap is free. Okay, great. So there's a lot of people in the chat saying Redcap is really, really good. And the chat is saying it's free. Again, I haven't tried Redcap. I hadn't heard of it till now. And then is this the last one? Yeah, coming in last, Microsoft Forms. Again, this is not coming in last in terms of recommendations or how good we think anything is, just how people voted. And in the chat, people are definitely talking about Airtable. So I do know some people who use Airtable to store data. I don't personally know anybody who uses Airtable to collect data, but I'm sure you can. All right. Data analysis tools. Number 1, the winner, Microsoft Excel. Which makes a lot of sense. Microsoft Excel used to be terrible, and now it's pretty good and has a lot more. You have a lot more ability to check the defaults and change the defaults than you used to. So having good skills at Excel can often be a very, very cost-efficient way to do some good analysis. R came in 2nd. R kind of / R Studio. This is absolutely what we live and breathe in here at We All Count. R is a programming language that is open source, so it is free, and anybody can build packages. And R Studio is also free at the individual level. If you want to do big fancy things, you can buy R Studio servers, but if you just want to use it as an individual, it's free. And it makes it a little bit nicer to kind of write code in R. So R does require you to get comfortable at the command line, but after you're comfortable at the command line, you have a ton of flexibility, and highly recommended if you feel like it. Google Sheets came in 3rd. So Google Sheets is kind of like Excel, but it's a Google product. And you can see it has the same thing as Excel. It has built-in graphics, and you can make dashboards and stuff like that. And it plays nicely with all the other Google things, like Google Forms can go directly into Google Sheets, which can go directly into Google Data Studio. Qualtrics, again, here for analysis. And this is fine and good. And if you're using any tool for its kind of 2nd tier, so like Qualtrics is a tool designed to collect data, and it also is good at analyzing data, and that that second tier, like the thing that it's also good at, which in this case is analyzing data, you just need to make really sure that you check the assumptions and the defaults, and that they're set to actually answer the questions and embed the experiences that you're trying. SAS, when I started, because I'm very old, used to be like the big, the fancy, the thing to use. It's very expensive. There might be free ways to get it if you're a nonprofit. It's usually used in clinical trials and stuff like that because of legislation, but it's very high end and very, very good. SPSS, also great. I think SPSS was the first thing I used way back in the 80s on a mainframe computer the size of like a house. It works great. You have to be very, very careful about the defaults if you're doing analysis with SPSS. Python is very good for data analysis and probably one of the leading tools. It's also a command line tool for building predictive analytics and AI driven. So if you think you're going to get into this AI stuff, Python is one of the ways to go. It's very good at that natural language processing, which most people call NLP. It has some of the best open source. Open source means you don't have to pay for it usually, and that you can access the code. You can see for yourself every choice that is being made. That's what open access means. It doesn't mean it's easy to do that, but you can. Stata or Stata, two pronunciations, also commonly used in some very specific sectors. Also very, very good and excellent. Tableau, I included here in the data analysis section because so many of you voted for it as your data analysis tool. Again, it has a lot of possibilities in analysis, but it wasn't built as an analysis tool. So you need to be extremely careful to check the defaults. Even the basics, like the way it's going to take an average, might not be what you think it's doing. And Power BI. Power BI is going to basically be an Excel driven, the same kind of analytic engine that Excel is using. Okay, data viz tools. Again, Excel came in first place. More of you voted for Excel by a ton than any other tool. And again, Excel has come such a long way. And there are some really, really good sources and teachers and books that can help you do almost anything you want to do in Excel. Tableau came in second. So Tableau is very expensive if you're a corporation, but I do believe they at least used to have free or almost free versions for journalists, and I think not free but lower cost versions for nonprofits, and they're working hard on the public sector. Tableau has recently been purchased by Salesforce, and it's always important to pay attention to who owns the tool that you are working with, because they have a lot of influence about what worldview and values are going to get embedded in the tool. Yes, sorry. Oh, thank you. Somebody is helping me by Dennis. Thank you, Dennis, for putting that link in there. Yes. RShiny. So RShiny is an extension of that R and RStudio language I was talking about that can make interactive visualizations. Not really up to speed with Tableau or D3, but it works. Power BI, I know very little about, but a lot of you voted for it. And I would assume that it's kind of like online interactive Excel, but I don't know because I don't use the Microsoft suites. Adobe Creative Cloud, a lot of you also mentioned. So Adobe Creative Cloud is professional level graphic design software, and you can't beat it. You can do pretty much anything that you want to do in Adobe Creative Cloud, from making something static to making something interactive, making it the exact color and in the exact language and the exact way to show time that you want. But the learning curve is steep, and a subscription can be costly. So pros and cons, but it's a great, great tool. And it also has really good training. If you're up for some self-training, really good training. Okay, D3 is a specific type of a language that's called JavaScript. And again, this is the type of tool that you need to use at the command line. You need to write code at the command line, but you can make really, really beautiful stuff with D3. And again, there's some great books. Scott Murray used to do a lot of good courses. I think he's retired. And then Google Data Studio, I think a very few number of people voted for it, but enough of you voted for it that I thought I should include it, because if you're using the Google Suite, you maybe want to consider this. Okay, I am, because it's quarter of now, I am literally gonna just scroll through this. You have the link to this, and if you can't access it right now because of your, like, our technical setup, we'll put this in the data equity forum, because I really want to open up the time to chat. So I linked to a bunch of specialty data tools. These are tools that are like one-offs. There's a ton. Oh, Deduce, thank you so much. I was looking so hard. I could not remember the name of Deduce. Care USA, which is a big international development nonprofit, uses Deduce, and I have used Deduce, and I could not find that. Thank you for putting that in the chat. I am so grateful. So there's a bunch of specialty tools designed to be used with the US Census data. And I know so many of you here rely on the US Census data, and they've actually kind of changed how they're sharing it, and they're not quite sharing as much as they used to in a lot of their public stuff. So if you want to get some on your own, here are a couple of tools. There's a link just to call Data Tools to Partners, and there was like a couple dozen tools that you could try. There's Stats for America, which is specifically designed for econometrics and economists. There's Data USA, which is free to use a little bit, and then you need to start paying for it. Deloitte, always important to remember, people who pay to create tools like Deloitte are embedding their values in those tools, which does not mean those tools are bad, just means you need to know that. And then the census itself produces interactive maps. And Census Reporter calls itself Making Census Data Easy to Use. I personally haven't used Census Reporter yet, so I'm not vouching for it, but I'm telling you that someone submitted it and said they liked it. All right. We are now having a little bit of, oh good, somebody here loves Census Reporter. Social Explorer, I'm having a little bit of technical trouble, but Social Explorer is also not free, but you can do a little bit about it that is free. It has census data. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and see if I can reset this. All right. Great. We made it really, really far on this really sketchy tech, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to stare at the screen anymore. That part of talking data equity might be over. No. All right. So I'm not going to be able to share my screen, but I will tell you that in that document that was shared previously and will be shared again, there are a couple of things that aren't census specific that I would really, really recommend you checking out if they're in your area. One is designed specifically for local health agencies, and it's a data collection tool. It's also a data analysis tool. There are two on county level equity issues. One is put out by the Racial Equity Atlas out on the West Coast, and they have downloadable Tableau workbooks that you can download and use with a free version of Tableau, and it's already preloaded with all kinds of equity data and things like living wage data, rent data, poverty data, income inequality data. So I highly recommend that you go through those specialty resources and see what's in there that might be good for you. But I am not going to share my screen anymore because my tech is over it. Okay, so we luckily have left 5 or 10 minutes to see if anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, or unmute and share a tool that they're using that we did not cover. There are some great conversations happening in the chat about ADA compliance, whether Tableau or other various visuals. And again, Tableau in its default, my best guess is that Tableau with its default settings is not ADA compliant. But my guess is also that if you know how to control the defaults, Tableau now allows for a lot of customization, and you can probably make it compliant with whatever you need it to be compliant with. But I'm not 100% sure. And it looks like there are a couple of people who are and know a lot more about compliance than me. So read that chat. Somebody is asking about, okay, great. And also there is something called Q, which is a great tool for quantitative data analysis. I have not heard of that, but it sounds good. A couple of people have given the thumbs up to that. Yes, some people are putting some great links to where to learn more about AI. And we will spend time learning more about AI for sure, but not quite yet. We want to make sure that we have something beyond the hype to say. Yes, I do recommend R. There's a question, do I recommend R for a new beginner? And the answer is yes. I mean, I'm very, very biased. I love R. I think R is great. I think there are a lot more resources now currently to help somebody who is not a computer programmer to learn R than there were. You know, a couple of years ago, even a decade ago, it was very, very hard to learn R on your own if you weren't like a real tech head. But now there are a lot of good sources, and we are very seriously considering running an intro to or a refresher to statistical analysis with an equity lens using R course. So keep in touch if you are interested. Yes, I think Zoom is having some issues. I apologize. That is because I am on vacation. Normally I'm at the Wheel Count offices where we have our nice server and our big tech setup and we can support all of you. Today I'm at an Airbnb in New Jersey with some sketchy tech, and I'm very happy it made it as long as it did. All right. Okay, I think I'm just trying to see what else I can see in the chat. Yeah. Okay, more on Airtable. So we're getting lots and lots of recommendations for Airtable. And to be honest, I have used Airtable to store and process data, but not to analyze it. Okay, Amy, you have your hand raised. I don't know if this is going to work, but what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is it won't work. So let's give it a go. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, thanks. I'm having some tech issues too, so I'm off camera, and I'm glad you're on vacation, by the way. I was playing around with I'm not sure how you pronounce it, the IPUMs, the contextual variables. Has anyone had success. And I mean, I literally spent like 10 minutes, so I can't say that I've tried too hard, but I just feel like there's a lot. I'm not making full use of the resource. So if other folks have had a good experience with that, I'd love to hear. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We actually, so for people who weren't here before, IPUMS, which is spelled IPUMS, is a fabulous source of data. It is included on the doc that I shared earlier today. And they just released recently a brand new set of data called the contextual determinants of health, which is fantastic because it doesn't focus on the individuals. It's not about individual characteristics. It's actually about the system and the structure and how that is causing or creating or influencing health. And we mentioned it in passing, I think, a few weeks ago, and we have gotten overwhelming response to, please, can we have a talking data equity that is on that specific data set? And the answer is yes. So we will be doing a full talking data equity only on that data set. So that is coming because we use it a lot and we love it. And to really echo Amy's request, if you're using it and you're having success and you're interested in either talking personally to me about that success or sharing your success on talking data equity, get in touch with me because we would love to highlight what you're doing. And Dennis is saying we're having trouble accessing IPUMS. Can you send me some screenshots of the messages you're getting? Because we should be able to sort that out. Yeah, so just send me some screenshots of the problems that you're having and we'll sort it out. I mean, not that I'm IPUMS. I'm not IPUMS, but I have worked a lot with IPUMS, so I know how to get on. So I'm happy to help you. Okay, so it's 5-1. And we're going to leave it here, both because my tech is failing and also we want to give you that 5 minutes to do whatever you need to do before what you're doing at the high end of the hour. So thank you for hanging in with the super sketchy tech. Next week, it's also me, but it's on a technical topic. Next week, we're doing statistical weighting. And we're going to include some beginner stuff, like some Excel stuff and how to work with very, very basic data. And we'll also make sure we include some more of the technical stuff where we will be using tools like R to show you some alternate ways to do weighting and why it matters for equity. So that's next Friday. And then the Friday after that, we have Dr. LaShawn. So Richardson. Oh, shoot. I don't have her name in front of me, but she's fantastic. Richburg Hayes, LaShawn Richburg Hayes from Westat, educational equity expert, who I have learned a lot from and does truly amazing work. She's going to share some of her examples with us. So that's in 2 weeks. So see you next Friday for weighting. See you in 2 weeks for LaShawn. And it's not going to be as fast today, putting up the recording and putting up that link, but we would really love for you to keep adding your tools and your suggestions to that tool list once I put it onto the forum, hopefully in a couple hours. All right. When I see you again, I will be in Canada. So my tech will be back. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great weekend. Take really good care of yourselves. Take really good care of each other. Bye, everybody.